Hi, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Astro Update. We're going to look at the dates of June 18th through June 25th. My name is Christa at Practical Astros, and I'm here with fellow Astera Sophia Kairos founding member Sonia of Celestia Astrology. Hi, Sonia.
Hi. Hello.
So, yeah, we're approaching the end of the month, but before we get there, we're going to have the sun enter Cancer, which starts off the week with us celebrating the summer solstice. This is kind of what we've been looking at all month. We're going to look at the sun. Once it goes into Cancer, it's going to square Saturn in Aries, square Neptune in Aries, but then meet up with Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter exalts in Cancer. And are we going to talk about the new moon, or is that going to be next week?
Yeah.
Okay. That will be happening right after the sun meets Cancer, the sun meets Jupiter, but we won't talk about it this week. So yeah, it's all about the sun and the sun's journey and squaring as it goes into Cancer.
A really sunshiny solar week, isn't it? And a lot of emphasis on those solar figures or father figures. Anything that we can think about that signifies the sun, and also for us, our purpose and clarity, the sun shining a spotlight on things.
Yeah, the tropical new year, when the sun goes into Aries, so it's that tropical sign. And now we're kind of through this first quarter of the tropical or the zodiacal year with the sun going into Cancer. It's been, the light takes over at Aries 1 and it ascends until it gets to Cancer 1. And at that point is when it starts to begin to descend. But while it's descending, we still have kind of the maximum amount of light, at least in the northern hemisphere. And symbolically, we have the maximum amount of light in the zodiacal year. Sun in Cancer year is different because as soon as it goes into Cancer, it will square this Saturn in Aries that we haven't seen since the mid-90s, and the Neptune in Aries, since we haven't seen for a lot longer than that. So the two squares that happen back to back in successive days right after the sun goes into Cancer is really what we're going to be talking about the majority of this week. And then after those squares, the sun will meet up with Jupiter in Cancer at 3 degrees, where Jupiter is exalted. So we have definitely talked about Jupiter in Cancer for the past couple of weeks. And we probably will continue to talk about Jupiter in Cancer for the next year because it's going to be involved in a lot of the story for 2025 before it moves out of Cancer and goes into Leo next year. So yeah, can we look at the first chart? You lead us off.
Yeah, that's on the 21st of June, and it's at 3:42 British Standard Time, so it's 2:42 in Universal Time. And we see the sun that's in the second house for London, about finances and resources and everything that supports, but it will be different houses for different locations. So that's why we don't talk about the houses usually when we're delineating, but you can't not see it when it's there. And it's a turning point, it's a cardinal place, a new start. And obviously it's conjunct Jupiter because it's just within that 2 degrees. So it's heading straight into that engagement. But as we also know, it's going to be moving into that square, but I do have a separate chart for that. So that ingress that carries the energy, that moment of Letha, the summer solstice, it's the Stonehenge moment or the Newgrange or wherever you are and you watch it. I know you have a street in New York, don't you, as well, that lines up with the solstice. And it's just fascinating how around the world so many places have buildings or these ancient monuments that lined up, how they had that astronomical accuracy just continues to fascinate me. And it's just so nice here how there's this absolutely exact sextile here with the moon, the exalted moon in Taurus. That's just such a beautiful symbology.
The sun being in Cancer can see both of its rulers because it can see the moon, which is exalted, and the exaltation ruler is right there. But it can, the moon is also co-present with, the ruler of Taurus, which is Venus. And so Venus is also supporting that. I like all of those. Cancer and Taurus make good friends, and just having the sun, Jupiter, Mercury in Cancer and the moon, Venus, and even crazy old Uranus over there in Taurus, like it does speak to a sweetness that might come into aid with that Saturn Neptune square to the sun.
Yeah. And like both of the luminaries look well placed, even though the sun doesn't have a particular dignity, it's peregrine Cancer, but we would usually say it was bona fide by being with Jupiter, but this puts Jupiter under the beams, but Jupiter is now in its own chariot because it's exalted. So there's a status here, I suppose, that's helping the sun in Cancer. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, I also just look at the sextile, pretty tight sextile between Mars and Jupiter there with with Mars at 2 degrees Virgo and Jupiter at 2 degrees Cancer. Sextiles are sometimes harder to see because they're the first chance after planets are conjoined. The next aspect they make is that sextile, so they can seem a little subtle. But that trine from the moon to Mars and then the sun and Jupiter kind of being caught in the middle of that trine by sextiling both of those is a really sweet moment. Mars is ruled by Mercury, which can see its ruler by whole sign. That's its exaltation and its domicile ruler. So I think the players that are involved are they've got each other's phone numbers. They're able to communicate in hopeful, supportive ways. And they might all be rallying to the aid of that Sun-Jupiter square to Saturn specifically, but also Neptune. Neptune in Aries is not something that we've really experienced. And if we think of Neptune as signifying things that kind of confuse, sometimes confusion can soften hardness. Like if there is some sort of hard lesson or demand that Saturn is placing, maybe it's a little bit diffused with that Neptune right there. We won't know it until we see it. But the idea of fog or mist or steam, more likely with it being in Mars's temple of Aries, I think that it won't make the harshness of that square from Saturn be as clear. It's almost like throwing a smoke bomb in the middle of a fight. It gives you a chance to kind of escape or hide a little bit longer, to call for your allies, to call for the supportive sextiles and trines to come to your aid. I feel like we're all going to be kind of rushing back to protect the Cancer house through the Taurus and Virgo houses from the attack that it's getting from the Aries house. It's a chance for us to show up. But aside from that, the Sun, Jupiter, they're together in Cancer. I think that it is kind of a sweetness. It's a celebration of the sun. And
we've only got 24 hours before that square to Saturn is exact for the sun. And we'll go to that chart next. But I put those notes about how it really is a solar week. And it's this high point of the sun, as we said with the solstice. And I spoke about the solar significations, but also about action when we think of the Cancer significations of what we're protecting and how that father, quite often we think of as a protector, as a baby or a young child. Quite often our father, the mother has a nurturing role, and if you're being really stereotypical about it, and the father is the protector and the provider. And we see here as we enter this solar week, this is like the father is the ultimate protector and provider, isn't it? And this clarity and light that's being shone on it with all these, like literally this week is all just sun significations. And as Christa said, we're just after Father's Day. Just feels symbolic in some kind of way that we're going to see something about solar figures, maybe. But that softness.
Softening or confusing or diffusing the hard edges of Saturn.
And there's something there about Mars as well being thrown into confusion as well, because he's got that sextile to the sun, but he's also ruling those planets that are causing the problems. So they're coming to him for the battle instructions, but he can't see them.
Yeah.
So he hasn't got a direct line to them, but he has got a direct line to the Sun and Jupiter, who he's supporting. So he's kind of supporting the enemy. If battle lines were drawn, he can't speak to those troops who are acting on his behalf, but he's in touch with the side they're acting against. So it's hard to say how that would play out in real life. Like if you're thinking about countries in negotiations, it's feels like something behind the scenes, something that's not necessarily being honest or upfront, and backroom conversations going on, and the parties not being what they seem, maybe.
Yeah, just kind of like maybe accidental or unintended partnerships, like kind of friends coming out of circumstances that maybe you wouldn't have expected it at the onset. There's a story in the American Civil War of one soldier taking a moment in the shade to smoke a cigar. And he's sitting there leaning up against a tree, and he looks down, and there's this rolled up tiny piece of paper, and he unscrolls it and sees like all of these strategy plans that were written down. And he takes it to his commander, and the commander reads it and sees the signature at the bottom. Now, you can leave decoys of plans that were not real, right? But it just so happened that the commander that it was given to worked at a post office where the person that signed it also had their signature verified over and over again, because it was kind of in the midst of, it was in Maryland, and it was like where the two boundaries of the North and the South were. So you had these crossover points prior to the war. So the commander had specific knowledge of what that person's signature should look like and recognized it for what it was. And so was able to use those plans to then defend preemptively and win the next series of battles. And it was this fluke of circumstances where you found your enemy's battle plans and were able to use it to your advantage. And that's kind of what this looks like. It's like Mars can't see the demands of Neptune, Saturn being placed upon the sun. So in a way, Mars might inadvertently be a supportive planet for the sun, Jupiter there. And so it's like, look to the unexpected or unintended support that comes from Virgo that kind of back channel supports the Cancer house to overcome the demands that the Aries house is placing on Cancer. So you can just put that on your own chart. You know, if you're Cancer rising, you know, the demands are coming from your work or your career. But then the third house, kind of your neighborhood or your fishbowl or your siblings or your immediate environment, is like inadvertently supporting you to help you out of overcome these really harsh demands that are coming from your workplace. You know, just as an example, it's like to be able to tie it back and to identify unexpected allies from that Virgo house to then support the Cancer house is kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then
it was at 18 hours or something.
Yeah, just
pretty close. Yeah.
So the sun is applying to that as it ingresses. So that stamp is already in that ingress chart, really. The sun in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries. So Saturn here, that's what we've been talking about, the sun, Saturn square, and Mars being able to come to the rescue there. Sort of having more in common, really, with that sextile that it's got there. And its lack of sight there.
Yeah, I think the lack of sight really kind of maybe helps slow down the malefic effect of Saturn.
Yeah, if we think of like the Saturn, I mean, it confuses things to have Neptune there because that's such a new signature that is certainly new to me as an astrologer. That, I mean, we've experienced it in Pisces, but we haven't experienced it in Aries. So we're getting to know by literally living through it. And Adam Ellenbus, our teacher, did a talk like this week, and he was looking at Saturn in Aries by reading that from the book of Liz Green, Saturn, A New Perspective on an Old Enemy. And it really hit about how Saturn in Aries can be about a loss of ego and a need to find your self-worth. And I was just thinking how people, especially new children, babies born now with this signature, how much harder it's going to be for them with Neptune there to find that, you know, to go through that signature of Saturn in Aries with Neptune there, if they're experiencing that loss of ego and a need to seek and find their self-worth, and how events often have happened and are taking on of responsibility at often a very young age that Saturn in Aries people tend to have experienced, how that Neptune is confusing it, and how those two are playing into this Jupiter sun that's maybe expanding that. That's where Saturn and Neptune are superior, that they're informing that Jupiter sun. But Saturn representing impermanence and loss and decay, but also a need for maturity and seriousness, discipline. And also I've always had as a signification the wisdom born of hardship or limitations. So it's what you learn through those tough experiences. So those Saturn in Aries generation that had those hard knocks and their egos like knocked away, and that struggle for self-worth, what wisdom did they learn from that, and how is Neptune informing that? And then now how is the sun lighting that up in that square? What action are they being called to take about it? And Jupiter may be expanding that in this very vulnerable place of Cancer. It feels quite intense. And then, like you say, add in the fact that Mars can't see Saturn, that Saturn is struggling that little bit. The sun, the light is brighter because Mars is able to inform and support it.
Yeah, just that whole time having the moon be there in Taurus, co-present with Venus, you know, the moon being the ruler of Cancer, really kind of providing aid and definitely providing that assistance. But I think it's, you know, it's like a character building moment for both of these squares, having Saturn and Neptune square the sun and Jupiter. I mean, Neptune and Jupiter are in a square right there too. It's like having all those players there, but at least the ruler of Cancer is fully fueled with all the support that it can get. And it will need it having experienced that square, but it doesn't mean it's easy. But the sense of empowerment. You only become empowered or find that empowerment when you are coming out of disempowerment. So this is that journey. This is part of that character building that happens through hardship.
Yeah, and if people have a really easy life, they tend not to have developed resilience. They tend to, as soon as there's one example is a skiing trip I went on, and I was learning to ski, and I was falling over roughly every half an hour. So I learned how to fall as much as I learned to ski. And the friend I was with, she did not fall. I mean, I was very impressed, but she went very cautiously, very slowly. And then on about the fourth day, she had what was quite a bad fall because she hadn't learned to fall. And that totally knocked her confidence. Whereas I fell over, I got back up, I carried on, and they didn't trouble me. And it's that kind of thing, because she'd like been so cautious and not fallen. That fall really knocked her confidence so badly if she hadn't developed that resilience. But by falling so often, it was just part of the process for me. It didn't worry me at all. It didn't hurt me because I'd learned to just into it.
Yeah, I learned how to juggle a long time ago, and the first lesson in juggling is you have the 3 balls or socks. So if you tie a sock in a knot, then you have 3 socks the same size. You can learn how to juggle that way. The first lesson is you hold them all in your hand, and then you just let them go, let them drop to the ground. You pick them up. You do that over and over and over and over and over, so that you learn how to drop them first. Like we think we know how to drop, we know how to let things fall. You want to have them do the other thing, but you have to really get ingrained and be comfortable and almost expect them to fall, so that then it doesn't like zap your ability or confidence to actually then juggle. It's like the first lesson is to learn how to fail over and over and over and over until you expect that. So you're not, your confidence isn't thrown. And yeah, if you don't have failure, you don't really learn or appreciate the win when you do. So I think that's a really great perspective, is like learn how to fall so that you can keep from falling over a longer period of time and not give up. Yeah,
or just fall comfortably, and just for it to be part of the learning process, a natural part of the learning process, not a disastrous part. Yeah. And that's kind of what this is feeling like being shone on your failures, as you learn who are you. Saturn at the very first degree of this Aries experience of who are you is very much a journey of hardship through that ego death of who are you. And there's going to be knocks and ego deaths as you travel this Saturn in Aries journey.
Yeah, a great phrase is, I didn't know that I needed to learn that.
Yes.
But now.
Yeah. So I think us learning how to fail is going to be a very much part of this process, and the sun lighting this up could be the first turning point in that, learning to just fail easier and not take it so hard and not give up. Keep your resilience going, because you haven't got the support of the ruler there. Look after your Saturn and look after your sun, because it's both vulnerable there.
So the next one is the Neptune square.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a continuation of the same story. Maybe not having as much clarity after that. Like, what was that all about? It might confuse what the lesson is at this point, but still kind of related to the Saturn square. It seems like part of the same one, but maybe then kind of being lost in what am I supposed to have learned from this? And that in itself might add insult to injury of failing or falling and then not being sure what the point of it all was. That clarity comes later, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Neptune can be so illusory. I've got like all those keywords, that transcendentness and also the otherworldly. And then Adam made me think of the chthonic nature. I think I've spoken to this before. Like, we know all the insects and creatures that we find on Earth, but what about all those ones underwater that we don't know? We know that the lovely dolphins, and when you think about it, they communicate in their own language, and sometimes they're able to learn our language, but they've got their own language of sonic sounds and things that they can communicate with. But what other monsters are there? There's the Loch Ness monster that's never been found, and what else lurks in those like dark depths of the ocean that we don't know, that aren't explored, while these billionaires are so busy exploring space. What's still on Earth to be found? And that fascinates me. And as the sun squares Neptune, is that going to be lit up? Parts of those depths, things to be found maybe below in those depths. The sun can always illuminate things and show us where we need to go. It can light our path, literally, and show us those things. And Neptune can dissolve as well, like the tides, if you think of it as the watery tides of the ocean. It has that ebbing and flowing nature, like the moon as well. And it can leave the debris behind, what it's washed up. things are suddenly revealed in the same way that Pluto can reveal secrets that the Earth held. Pluto reveals what's been buried under the Earth, and Neptune reveals what's been buried in the ocean.
This does feel like a day of like listening to those messages, because we have the moon at 3 degrees Gemini at this moment, trying that retrograde Pluto, but it's moving into a pretty close antisha with Mercury in Cancer. And so Mercury and the moon at this point have mutual reception. They're averse, but they are bound by antisha. And Mercury and the moon are both significators of just the mind and how we process and interpret and translate and transmit. And having that happen simultaneous to Neptune square the sun, I think is, this is what's happening in the morning for the UK.
9:29 British Standard Time, so 8:29 Universal Time on the 23rd of June.
Yeah, so it's about 6 in the morning for the US, about 3 in the morning for the West Coast. And so I look at it, because I work in the dream, about really having clarity and intention with writing the dreams down when they come in, and kind of meditating on that to kind of help. What is the kind of conflict that's happening with Neptune and the sun? Go through occulted ways, through meditation, through exercise, with Mercury and the moon. I think that exercise and having the endorphin of running or swimming, and like the not having the distractions of a screen or conversation or work distracting you from what are the downloads or the transmissions that may come through that, because I feel like it'll be hard to discern on its own with that square to Neptune. The Mercury moon, mutual reception there, and Antisha being kind of a workaround to find some clarity in this moment of continued discord with that square from Saturn, and the confusing discord of the square to Neptune.
Yes, it looks good for a shower download, doesn't it? Antisha and mutual reception there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you rarely hear anything while you're at a screen, or you've got TV on or anything like that. Nothing's going to come through then.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does look like messages could.
Yeah, looking at a chart like this, I use my phone as an alarm clock, and I think that that's a mistake. I think I need to keep my phone out of my bedroom so that I don't have that immediate distraction of waking up, that I just have a regular alarm clock, that then I can sit with the dream when I wake up. I do write my dreams down. I do think about them, but a lot of times that special Neptunian like energy of the dream, of like sitting in the interpretation of the dream or the visual of the dream, is kind of burned away by looking at a screen first thing. And I like just looking at a chart like that. It's like, I want to be able to really honor that moment. And I can see it just being burned off, like the sun burning the fog away too quickly, the screen or the phone burning away that liminal beauty of what messages come through in a dream space. That I promise to have a regular alarm clock and not use my phone as my alarm clock by this day, because I really do want to kind of capture that.
That's great insight. Yeah, I would love to say that I would do the same, but I'm like I spent too much time there. I can't see how I could manage that.
I need to. I need to. This is like the tension of like, I don't want to do it, and I know that I need to.
Yeah, I just go to bed too early, and I'm communicating with too many of you in America. If my phone wasn't in there, I'd be out of so many conversations.
True.
I probably would get to sleep earlier.
Yeah, maybe we should all stop texting Sonia, who's like...
And I put my phone down, but I hear the buzz, even when it's
FOMO.
silent. If you're half awake and you hear it vibrate, it's like, I'm not going to check it. I'm not going to check it. And then 20 minutes later, if you're still awake, you check it.
Yeah. Or you wake up and you have 177 WhatsApp notifications.
Yeah, I think our record was when Shauna finished work one day and she had 300 odd. We've had a chatty day.
Sorry, not sorry, Shauna.
Yeah.
All right, so what's next? We're not looking at the new moon yet. Yes. The moon. Yeah, the Cazimi with Jupiter and the sun. So after that square, they will have a moment where they are both past the square. They're pretty still tightly in there, but past the exact degree, they're moving away from the squares from Neptune and Saturn. And the day after, the moon joins them too. So I like this energy as the new moon as well. The moon is 11 degrees away. It's in Gemini, but it's 11 degrees away from this Cazimi. And Mercury is also there. Like this day into the next day, the 24th to the 25th, I think are really beautiful. And of course, I'm a Cazimi fan, but the sun kind of at its peak in the summer, and Jupiter in exaltation is really just really sweet. Still within that first decan of Cancer, the Lord of Love, ruled by Venus. It can see Venus by whole sign, Venus over there at home in Taurus. So yeah, really, really beautiful day. Even more so to like, put the phone down and get the download from the day before, because I feel like it'll continue on with this Cazimi in Cancer. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really nice. It's just those images of that warm, sunny, nice day. It's I always get that Sandy and Danny feeling, like that summer love song, just at the beginning of the film when everybody's, they've gone back to school, but they're all reminiscing on their summer holidays, and it's happiness before the darker stuff comes in. And it's like just warm, sunny, being like Jupiter and the Sun. They're both life-giving planets, so they both help things grow, bring things together.
This is also St. John the Baptist Day, June 24th, and the St. John's flower is usually in bloom, the bright yellow flower. But I think of just the symbolism of baptizing and honoring yourself with water as a purifier and a protector. I think that if you do any sort of Cazimi ritual or honor, to include water, and even if it's just giving gratitude toward water, having access to clean water, having access to flowing water. People around the world often don't have access to it. Us in Western North Carolina went months without having access to flowing water because of a hurricane that disrupted the water source. It definitely is remembering the beauty and the power and the connection that water has. I would just include water, looking at the mythology of, St. John the Baptist, but just as the symbol of bathing things in water and purifying and cleansing, as kind of an act of honoring that Cazimi in Cancer, with the moon kind of getting a little bit closer the next day with the new moon. I think is just really, really, really potent, really powerful, and almost feels like this is when we really start to see Jupiter in Cancer after it's past that square. It's like now Jupiter kind of gets to do what it wants to do while it's past that square and its exaltation. It feels like it's kind of gone through that awkwardness, that clunkiness of the ingress. At this point, it's moving past it, and we get to experience it fully at this point. It came in June 9th, but by June 20th, it's like, okay, now maybe this is what it'll be about.
Yeah. We should say, like, this Cazimi moment, it switches sides with the sun. It has this new conversation. It starts a new cycle with the sun when they do Cazimi. And it's like a new conversation. They set a new agenda of what their next cycle will be. So it's a year now that the sun will travel around before it next meets Jupiter in this way. And like a moon cycle, they will have an opening square, an opposition, a closing square. So there'll be a story that folds forward from this moment. This is like a new moon, and it's just, as Christa said, like the significance of a new moon forming as this does. It's like Jupiter raising it up even more so, bringing that unity and the Jupiterian significations of abundance and that exalted Jupiterness to it. And this new story that's unfolding from this Cancerian place of the Jupiter stay in Cancer, but also like the relationship for Jupiter with the Sun for the next year coming. This new story that's going to unfold from the Cancer part of our charts.
Because next year when the Sun and Jupiter come together, it'll be in Leo. It'll be at 6 degrees Leo, which is where the retrograde was for Mars. So this is the only Sun Jupiter that we'll have in Cancer during this cycle. So it's a special day.
Yeah, it is. And of course, Jupiter won't be exalted anymore then. So it's like rare, because Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. It's rare to have this Cazimi when Jupiter is this dignified to every 12 years, either when it's in Sagittarius, when it's home. No, there'd be 3, wouldn't there? When it's in
Pisces, yeah.
Sagittarius, or when it's exalted in Cancer. So we get 3 in 12 years when it's got this kind of dignity. But exaltation is a special kind of dignity. It kind of doesn't have the responsibilities that it does when it's in domicile. The responsibilities that you have as a homeowner and looking after things. But exaltation, as Christa said earlier, people are bringing things to you and looking after you in some kind of way. So it's a different kind of dignity.
Thanks for joining us for another week. Let us know how your solstice went, how your Cazimi went, and especially if you have a June birthday, how your solar return looks, because there's lots of activity happening in June. And we'd love to hear. So comment below, share with your friends, and let us know any insights that come through during that Cazimi.
Yeah, it would have to be a sun, would it, for this week?
Illumination.
Yeah, illumination and a sun emoji. Thank you so much, Christa from Practical Astros, and I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.